So I am a divorced mom with 2 kids, and finding a man in New York City proved a little challenging. So I'm a real estate broker also, which you'll hear about today. And anyway, so instead of putting my normal taxi ad in, I decided to put in an ad for a man for Ann on the New York City taxis. And anyway, it ended up going viral, and truly, 15 million people around the world ended up seeing it. Of course, only 3 men responded to me in New York City. 22, 82, and a Trump supporter. So anyway, but crazy enough, I ended up getting men from around the country in different areas of the country, which is a whole other thing. It's a great TV show, actually. But anyway, so what happened though was that I didn't just say, hey, looking for love. But what I did say was that I was 56 and fabulous. And so a couple days ago, actually, even, there's not a week that goes by, and at that time, 3 years ago, there were an incredible amount of people daily that would come up to me and they'd whisper, there were women, and they'd say, did it work? They wouldn't even say, like, did the cat, they would say, did it work? And I was like, yeah. And they're like, that was really brave. And I said, well, what was brave? Because then I started to ask, like, I thought, hey, saying you're looking for somebody in a New York City taxi, I had men from jail calling, so it was very brave. I'm in for rape, but I'm not guilty. And I'm like, oh my God. And he's like, but I love because I said, if you love your mother, but still don't live with her. And he's like, and my mother wants you to call her. And I was like, oh my God, but I can't call because I'm in Rikers, oh my God. But I said, why am I brave? And they looked at me like I should know. And I said, because I said how old I was? And they said, yes. So that is the beginning of the Wise and Wonderful Women. And I had just moved into this building, and so it enabled me to have this beautiful space, and they give me the chairs, and they give me the tables, and then I have wonderful people that work for me and help me put these crazy events on. So that's how it started. So the Facebook page now has 993 people, and I'm gonna ask you to please have your friends join. There's also 1,800 people on the actual mailing list, and it's growing all the time. So if there's a topic that you think is interesting, that you want to come, obviously come. But if there's a topic that you think is interesting and you're not able to make it, there's actually a website. It's my Annie Gets It Done website, and you go into the women's events, and there's a video library. So any of these events are videoed by the fantastic videographer, Tyler Miller, and his lovely lady, Rachel. And anyway, so if you need any videography, he's wonderful. But anyway, so I encourage you to look back on those because they're really great topics and they're very important for any woman. In fact, actually, even for younger women, but certainly for our age as well. So I am a real estate broker, and I've never done an event on real estate. And it's a very timely thing because, interestingly enough, having been a broker now for 40 years, I have weathered a lot of different storms. And so when the Silicon Valley banking crisis happened, I said, okay, here we go. I am going to have another period of time where no deals get done, dead, here it goes, and it's going to be a disaster. It's actually turned into be the opposite. I sold probably 5 apartments in the last couple of weeks, and I sold 4 of them to people that are buying for their kids because they're feeling that it might be a better investment to actually have a hard asset, because I don't know about you, but I had all my money at First Republic, and I panicked. And so I'm like, I'm only insured for $250,000, and that's like, holy shit, right? So anyway, so it was interesting. So I just figured, you know what, let's talk about this. This event was happening before that. But a few kind of housekeeping items. I wanted to say one of my favorite things in the world is the night before these events, to read the bios, because it's like badass women, all of you. And I think that many of you, where's Kira Copperman? Okay, so Kira did this great, it was January, I guess, January, February, it was January, on the imposter syndrome. And I know that so many of us feel like, well, I'm not a badass, I'm not like, I haven't accomplished anything, everybody else does more than me. I love reading that because every single one of you has a story, and it's resilience, and it is next chapters and divorces and losses and all kinds of things. And you know, I want you to all just pat yourself on the back for being here, walking into a room where you don't know people, just, you know, learning. It's great. So, and that's the wonderful thing also, I think, about this age is where you realize the importance also, especially after the pandemic, the importance of female friends. So please use those bios. If any of you are also looking for a job or looking for, like, what do I do? We keep all those bios in a master list. So call me, I'm happy to send them to you and look through and see, is there anybody on there that I might be interested in working with, collaborating with, being friends with, whatever. Somebody's kid went to a school and your kid is applying. Reach out to those people. So feel free to reach out to me. That's what they're there for. But they're also, the reason why I ask you where you live, it's not to hunt you down to have you sell your apartment. It's like, and so what, are you in an A-line Classic 6 facing the river? It is because I want you to go home with each other. I want you to ask each other out. This is like think of this as speed dating. You just sat down with somebody that you don't know. So look and see where you guys live and go home together. So one thing, and I want you to also use the pads that are on the table. So the pads on the table and the pens, you're going to need information that you're going to write down today. So grab them and write them down. But the first thing you're going to write down is the back address of this building. So if you're taking an Uber, it's the easier way to get out. When you leave here, go to the lower lobby, not the front, and it's 553 West 30th. Okay, 553 West 30th Street. Okay? So that way, if you want to share a cab or whatever, you're going to the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, you go ahead and do that. So last but not least, there's a card there also. Follow me on Instagram because if you are interested in real estate, which clearly all of you are here to learn about real estate, you're going to see all kinds of things happening in my crazy life. And I'm always like pointing out different things or showing different properties, but also just like what's working, what's not working. And you'll learn. You'll also see about my crazy dating life occasionally, which is very entertaining. But anyway, and the Facebook page, I'm 7 people away from getting to 1,000. So Twyla, where's Twyla? Twyla? Okay, you raise your hand, girl. Okay, I love her. I put out a little request and I said to everybody, listen, just invite your friends on Facebook, invite them to the Facebook, the Wise and Wonderful. By the way, you have to spell it Wise and Wonderful or else it goes to some weird page that God only knows what's happening there. So the Wise and Wonderful Women, Twyla had 62 friends that she actually invited to the page the other day. I was like, look at this, Twyla. So thank you. She said I'm a rule follower, but she's also a very big supporter, so I really appreciate that. So anyway, okay. So I think I covered, one thing. Does anybody here from Impact 100? Okay, so one shout out to Impact 100 because this is a great thing. Impact 100 is a joint giving organization. $1,000 a year, 100 women, there's chapters around the country, but in New York City, obviously more than 100 women have joined. And you put in $1,000, you get together with all these different women, but you then are able to make an impactful gift to a nonprofit in the New York City area. And they'll make, if there's 300 women, they'll make $300,000 grants. But we all decide who it goes to. We all learn about these nonprofits. And it's a wonderful way to know where your money's going and then be involved with the program. And also just to learn about all these cool things that are happening and get inspired about something that you might want to get interested in. So that's Impact 100, and I've met some wonderful women that way, so I just wanted to give them a shout out. Okay, so we're going to get to real estate. I have nothing written down. So, so that's the end of the show. I want to say, so who owns real estate here in New York City? Okay. And who is thinking about buying an apartment in New York City? Okay. And who, bigger question, who's thinking about potentially either leaving New York City or buying a piece of property outside of New York City? Right? Okay. And so, you know, I guess to start with, what do we see as kind of the overview of the New York City market? And I will be very honest with you. I am concerned, having started a nonprofit that cleans the streets of the Upper West Side called One Block. I've gotten very involved with local politics, not very involved. Maria, where's Maria Denzillo, who has been running for wonderful, she's a tireless advocate for the Upper West Side, Maria, okay? But just getting a little taste of New York City politics and seeing that we are basically bankrupt. I'm very worried that we're going to be taxed to death because we don't have the money, and that they're going to hold the people that own real estate kind of captive because we're the audience here that can't leave. But what I am seeing is so many people domiciling other places. So they're for tax purposes. They might not be leaving New York, they might be scaling down, but they're going to Florida where there's no taxes. So what I didn't realize, and I don't want to just, because I know that there's other people there that didn't realize, I didn't realize, I'm like, saving up my next nest egg, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to have that retirement money. What I didn't realize is, yes, the federal government, when I take that out, charges me tax. But what I didn't realize is the state and the city does too. So that's just another reason why, quality of life, you have to live in Florida, okay? But it's also a tax, being not taxed on your income now and not being taxed on your retirement later on. So what's happening as a city is that New York is losing a lot of income because a lot of high net individuals are now domiciling other places. They're not necessarily leaving completely, but they're domiciling someplace else. And their tax dollars are coming out, and we've already lost a lot of revenue from businesses. We've also lost money in terms of how many stores are closed. And so that makes me concerned for New York City real estate. And there are other things that are happening inside of New York City, and I think that they will keep taxing us. So what can you do? I would not be in business if I didn't sell real estate. If you think that you're not going to be living in an apartment for more than 3 to 5 years, you shouldn't buy an apartment. You shouldn't, okay? So I will tell you that at least once a week, that I sit down with somebody and they call me in to price their apartment because they're going to sell, and I talk them into not selling. Okay. Actually, we got case in point sitting in the room, actually. So, I wasn't going to call anybody out, but anyway. But, to sit down and just go through, because sometimes you've got a lot of equity in your apartment. I don't know if there's anybody in this room that has an apartment that maybe is too big for them, and they really know that they probably should scale down, but the cost of selling apartments and the capital gains is so much that they're in their apartment, and then they can't move because there's a huge capital gain, but they've got the equity locked in there. So one of the things we're going to talk about with Maria, because I've got 2 wonderful women here that can help you in other areas that I can't. But it used to be many years. Kathy, your hair looks fabulous. We have to come. She needs a chair. sorry. It's a long story. Sorry. Anyway. But the gloss looks fantastic. I love her gloss. Sorry. So anyway, what if you are going to sell your apartment? Okay, it is imperative, and the shows on HGTV and MTV have helped to show and showcase what the befores and afters look like. And I do this all the time on my Instagram, where I show what something looked like before and what looked like after. So you can't take personally when a good broker walks in and says, you need to paint, you need to get rid of that recliner, you need to, take off your curtains. How many of you have curtains you never close, you never, you have blinds that you never, but they're there. But somebody with a good professional eye can come in, and I can't tell you how you can feel people get taken aback by well, what do you mean? Understand, it's not about you anymore. And quite honestly, the buyer doesn't want to see your stuff. And I'm doing a disservice for you if people are looking at your stuff and they're not looking at your apartment. So the whole idea that you have to get rid of your personal pictures and everything has to go away, that's not it. If there's a bunch of mismatching frames, then that doesn't look good because it's just stuff. But if it's pictures and personal, that brings warmth to the space. People want to know that somebody lives there. But what they can't be doing is walking around and not really seeing the space. So that's what a good staging does. And staging does not take a lot of money. There is, I am quite honestly disgusted with some of my coworkers who hand a card to somebody and say, call this stager. There are stagers that will cost $80,000, $60,000, $100,000. And if you're talking about a big house and they're going to be, that's something that's different. But there's no reason for it. An inexpensive painter cleaning things up, neutralizing the space, getting rid of things. I've got a moving company that I work with that will take pieces out and they will store them for you. So I have a newsletter, which I just started recently, and I encourage you because there's a lot of cool stuff in there. There's things about, does anybody know that there's going to be 14 pickleball courts in Central Park? How cool is that? 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week. That is the coolest thing. I am going to start my day playing pickleball. I don't even play pickleball. But that's definitely the man for me, I'm sure, is the pickleball court. So anyway, but there's things about health and wellness in there, but there's also things about how, just about kind of like real estate, but real estate from kind of a perspective of, I'm selling my own apartment now. And the anxiety of living there with my daughter, who I love very dearly, who's in the back. But like, it's like the two of us are leaving the house and it's like, is the bed made? Like military, like, can you bounce a quarter off of it? No one's coming to see it, but I'm like, okay, are there flowers there? Is everything perfect? Because it's very stressful. So it's put me in a position of really understanding my sellers in a much more empathetic way about the stress that they're under. So then a weekend goes by and no one calls to see my apartment. And I go, oh my God, what am I doing? No one's coming. And then I want to call my broker and say, why isn't anybody coming? So I call myself up and I was like, okay. So, and what's going on is, okay, spring break, these last 2 weeks is quiet, right? Is my apartment priced properly? I'm losing money. This is my newsletter if anybody got it today. I'm losing money on my apartment, okay? I feel like loser, right? I am like one of the top brokers in New York City. How is it possible that I'm losing money in my apartment? So I could sit there and say, I'm not going to lose money in my apartment, and I'm going to sit here and be in denial. I don't have to sell my apartment, so that could be one possibility. But if I do, if the apartment doesn't fit my needs anymore, then I need to accept that reality, and I need to put my best foot forward and do the quarter off the bed and get the flowers all done and make sure everything's all cleaned up. But I have to price it properly. Because if no one is coming in, and it's a week or 2 or 3, I gotta move the price. So it's not because I'm having a fire sale in my own apartment. I'm not. But the market has told me it's not the right price. So the whole concept of it only takes one buyer, it's not really true. Because what is one of the first things that somebody says when they walk into an apartment? How long has it been on the market, right? Oh, I'm like, oh, well, there was like a flood, and then down the street, but not in this apartment, and then they couldn't show the apartment. We couldn't get here in the canoe. There's no way to explain that an apartment has been on for a long period of time, right? So changing the price of an apartment is not a problem, but sitting there and not changing the price is a big problem. And again, it's personal. I feel stupid. This is a reflection on me. How could I do this? But what I was able to realize was that I have made money in other real estate that I have purchased. I have been I'm so conservative. I haven't made a ton of money in the stock market at all. But would I have beaten myself up in the same way? Does anybody own Amazon stock? Okay, sadly. So, right. So that seemed, the pandemic's happening. If I get my toothbrush delivered on Amazon, that seems like the safest bet in the world. That stock is down more than 50%, okay? So my apartment's not down 50%, but I wouldn't feel stupid. I wouldn't go oh my God, flag myself, that I bought Amazon. But you do take it personally when it's your piece of real estate. So if there's anything that I can tell you is you can't take it personally. You have to hire a very good person. You have to make sure there's recent comps, not I think it should sell. I think it should sell. I heard that it should sell. Something else is listed at X price. What are apartments going into contract in the last 3 months? So here's the problem with New York City real estate. The data that you see is old. Okay, for a co-op, so if anybody's thinking about selling, right, the co-op process has become, that the condo process is basically becoming like the condo process. Sorry, the condo process is becoming like a co-op process. It takes, you have to fill out an application, personal letters of reference, income tax returns, all kinds of crazy stuff for condominiums, and it has to go to a board. So it's taking 3 to 4 months to close a deal Because if you're getting financing, it's taking 6 to 8 weeks to get a commitment letter, okay? So anybody that's thinking, you have to plan ahead for that, because it's also probably not going to sell right away. So it's important to kind of time those things. I'm going to talk to Tina about how, and Tina's a wonderful real estate attorney, about how you should hold your asset. Because the question is also, I'll tell you, and this is a theme that I have in every single one of these meetings, you must take care of yourselves, ladies. Take the blinders off. Get your name on the real estate, okay? Make sure, I say this every single time, if you were the beneficiary of a life insurance policy, you pay it, okay? Because I can't tell you, every week, I walk into an apartment and there is a major financial disaster. Somebody has not filed tax returns. Somebody has not paid the common charges and real estate taxes. There's just drama. So we all want to be in loving, trusting relationships, but you also have to be a co-partner in that and make sure that you are covered. And real estate, for most of us, is our biggest investment and our biggest asset. So Tina's going to talk to you about how you should hold it, okay? So in terms of mortgages, we're going to talk about with Maria, who helped me get my mortgage. If you're thinking about going anyplace else in the city, obviously call me. But if you're thinking about going anyplace in the country, call me too, because I've got really good brokers around the country. But also, and this is another thing, that when my parents, and many of you are going to have parents that are either going into assisted living, scaling down, have passed away, I can help you. Because oftentimes, that stubborn parent that is not listening to anything you have to say will listen to me, who's like somebody else, a professional. And I will FaceTime people. I do this all the time. I'm like, hey, let's walk through your apartment with you, And they're like, I told her she has to get rid of it. And I'm like, let me see. Like, it's all good. I'm like, hey, I can't really see your view. Do you have a view? Yes, I've got trees and a bird that's outside. I can't really see it. So let's see it together. It would be great. Let's clean those windows. And it comes from somebody else. And with anything in your life, if it comes from somebody else, it's like, oh, like the gate's open, right? So so it's important for that piece of property that you're going to be selling, to make sure that it's handled as well. Because sometimes what will happen with older people is that they'll use their broker that really is either a hobbyist or just not as active as they used to be in that field. And you need somebody that knows what's happening in the market, and it's really, really important. So, if you need anything real estate related, if your kids, I can't tell you how many phone calls that I got this summer. My kid just graduated from college looking for a rental. Can you help them? And I'm like, no, I cannot. But this is what I can help you with. If you think it's a sketchy broker, this is what you need to do. These are the papers. If you who has kids that are going to be looking for their own apartments? I do, right? So you need to make sure that they hold their credit report. Okay, so these are a couple things that when you're looking to buy as well. Okay, but for rentals as well, you can pull your credit report very easily through your credit card company, and it doesn't affect your credit. So every time you pull credit, an official credit, it decreases your credit. Okay. So if you can pull it without them hurting your credit. Pull it on yourselves and see what your credit is, because sometimes what's happened is there's something that's a glitch, and there's a problem and you don't realize it. And if you are going to buy a piece of property, you getting a mortgage at a very good rate or a mortgage at all, or passing a co-op board, is going to be dependent on you having a good credit score. So pull that, but your kids should pull it as well. They should also have their bank statements. They should also have their last pay stub, and you will probably need a New York City guarantor. So if your kids are moving in with somebody that is somebody from out of town, they're probably not going to take that parent as guarantor, and you might be on the hook of doing it yourself here in New York City, and you being the sole guarantor. So you kind of have to think about what it is that you're willing to do in advance and be really clear with your kids about whether that's okay or not. One really weird thing for the rental market, and this is ridiculous, but this also affects if you're selling an apartment as somebody that has a lot of assets but no income. New York State assembly, I think, the state senate, decided to pass a rule that said landlords cannot take more than 1 month's rent as security deposit. Okay, that sounds reasonable, right? Wrong. The problem is, I have many older people that are selling their apartments. They don't have much income. They're going to have $2 million in the bank, $1.5 million, whatever. They can't get an apartment because the landlord will go by this ridiculous, you have to be making per week what you're paying in rent per month, and they don't have it, but they have all these assets. And so before, we'd be able to prepay the rent. We'd be able to give extra security. We can't do that anymore. The hands are tied. It's ridiculous. So when somebody comes in to go through those numbers with somebody that's been in an apartment for a long time, I have to go in and say, hey, sounds good that you're going to get $2 million, and hey, you only have a $50,000 home equity loan. But you're going to have your flip tax for your building, a city and state transfer tax, which is almost 2%. You're going to have a capital gain, which is city, state, and federal. That's about 33% on anything over. So as a married couple, you get a $500,000 tax-free gain. As a single person, you get a $250,000 tax-free gain, right? But anything above that, you're going to be paying a huge amount of taxes on. And if somebody doesn't walk you through that, you don't know what you're going to actually end up with in the bank. So that is super, super important. So I'm going to call up our experts now and just kind of go over some basic things, because the idea, like the whole genre of real estate is so huge, and I want to also be able to answer any questions for you. So Maria Esposito, she is a vice president and head of the new, like, what is your other title in terms of?
Oh, I'm the New York City sales manager.
There you go, with Citizens Bank. With Citizens Bank, have a seat. And Citizens is a wonderful bank, and Maria is a wonderful broker who really was able to navigate this whole process with me, and it was not easy, because if anybody does not have a salaried job, even though I've been doing my job for 40 years and my income's been very consistent, I technically work for myself. So I'm not a salaried employee, and I can't even tell you what they put me through. It's really hard, and it is not just Citizens Bank. It is any bank, so that's really important for you to know, especially as you might be changing careers, right? So if you are thinking about buying something, and you're thinking about retiring, if you're thinking about, changing your job, you need to think about this. You either need to get a rental now, get a new apartment now while you still have that history. Do not do it after within 2 years?
2 years.
Within 2 years of changing your job, because it will basically be impossible to get a loan, all right? Tina Moralia, otherwise, really it's Tina Moralia, but I always know her as Tina. Tina Moralia is a partner with DL Partners, and she is a fabulous real estate attorney. And I work with her on all of my very big clients who are not easy, and she is really, really fantastic. So, and having these two women in your corner, if you're thinking about doing any kind of transaction, is really, really important. So, Maria, I want to ask you about rates, because, I was thinking that the real estate market, and the real estate market definitely has slowed down. The real estate market has definitely, it is kind of, the height was 2014, and then 2017, there was another blip. So depending on the unit, could be down 10%. I just kind of go by what's the last 6 months. But when interest rates started to, really, they were as cheap as 2.25%.
Below 3%. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So now they've doubled, tripled, okay? It's slowed down the market, but it does not put a bullet in it, because what's historically, like in the last, what has been the interest rate?
So interestingly enough, historically, interest rates have been where they are right now today, around 6%, right? So rates, average rate has been around that. And the highest rates have ever been was back in the 80s, 1981, it was about 16.5%. And the lowest was in 2021. That's when it was below 3%. But in a good portion of the 2000s, 2010s, et cetera, rates have actually been in that 5.5% to 6.5% range. Last year we climbed up to 7%. Interestingly enough, after the Fed raised rates last week, you hear about the Fed raising rates. Mortgage rates actually came down a little bit. So right now, I would say on average, they're in the, you'll always see posted like the average 30-year fixed rate, but that's not really the rate that most people in New York City are getting because we're getting jumbo loans, bigger loans, et cetera.
So would the rates be higher or lower?
They're actually lower, right? So that's inverted right now. Jumbo loans pricing is a little bit better. And yeah, so average 30-year fixed rate is around 6.25%. If you have better credit, maybe you can get a lower rate. If you have worse credit, you're gonna pay a higher rate. If you need to finance more, you pay a higher rate. If you're putting 40% or more down, you pay a lower rate. If you have money and can bring wealth, or you already have wealth at your lender, you're gonna get a lower rate with most lenders. Not every lender offers that.
Well, I mean, I think it's a quarter.
It's like 5/8% lower with $1 million. It's a 0.5% lower with 500,000.
And so you can take into account, like if you have a retirement account of
Just move a
500,000,
retirement account over an IRA, something like that.
and you just move it over and get a big discount on that. So that's really important.
There's also a really big disparity right now between fixed and ARMs, right? An ARM is an adjustable rate mortgage, and that's not a variable rate loan. It's just a rate that is fixed for a certain period of time and then converts to an adjustable rate period. So a 10-year ARM is still a 30-year mortgage, but it's fixed for 10 years. Usually the 10-year ARM and the 30-year fixed are very close together. Right? Maybe a 0.25% difference. Right now, there is a wide disparity between those two.
So what would it be? Like what's
Like a whole percent. So if you're paying 6.25% on a 30-year fixed, you could probably get a 10-year ARM at 5.25%.
Okay, so I'm going to just take the devil's advocate. So I'm going to say, okay, well, so interest rates are going up, so I've got to go for my 30-year fixed.
Right.
Wrong. Right? Okay.
Right.
So what's the average? What's the average that someone stays in a New York City apartment?
The average over the last 23 years, actually, I don't know the answer to how long they stayed in an apartment, but I can tell you the average life of a loan. The life of a mortgage, nationwide, 7.5 years. In New York City, it's been 5.5 years. Now, that may skew higher in the next coming years because what we are running into now is that people that bought homes and got mortgages at 2.5% and 3%, like that first-time home buyer market is, those aren't churning as quickly as they normally do, right? They're normally out of there within 3 to 5 years. But yeah, the difference in payment on $1 million between 6.25% and 5.25% is $1,147, right? It's pretty substantial.
And that's on $1 million loan.
And that's on $1 million.
$1 million loan. Okay, so $1 million loan. So a fixed rate. So if you guys want to write this down, just you can break it down, and obviously Maria's available at any point to talk with you.
I feel like I have the least sexiest part of real estate. I don't
Oh,
know.
no, it's fine.
Like, I have to show you all the beautiful homes and the view and this and that. And I'm
Yeah,
like,
but you're able to afford them. I mean, I would not be living in this home if you had not helped me get my loan. So it's all.
I always like to, every Anne said, like how it's just not a pleasant, like nobody likes getting a mortgage or going through the loan process, and especially after 2008 with the housing collapse,
Right. They ask
There's
crazy.
there's so many more regulations and guidelines in place, and really that's to protect all of us here as buyers as well. But yeah, I often kid that like we're going to ask you for your tax returns, your bank statements, pull your credit, ask for a stool sample, and then maybe we'll give you the loan at the end of that.
Oh, and one thing I wanted to point out also, because this is what happened to a client of mine, they got their commitment letter, and then they were going to close soon. Right? They got their board pack, they were board approved, and then they went out and bought furniture on credit. And all of a sudden, they put all this stuff on there, and right before you
You know
close,
what we call that?
no,
UDM, undisclosed debt monitoring.
no, but how many days before you close? It's like a week before you close, they pull the credit
It's
again.
pulling. It's not a hard pull on your credit, but there's all this great technology out there that lenders now subscribe to, that as soon as you buy something or even have like a credit inquiry. This is a true story. I had a client that the underwriter said, ask if he bought a Ferrari. And I'm like, he didn't buy a Ferrari. He's like this Asian accountant that's living in Stamford, Connecticut, I'm like, it's a CPA. And I called him up and I'm like, Mr. Lee, I'm like, you didn't buy a Ferrari, did you? He's like, oh yes, I love cars. And I'm like, no! I hope you like it more than the house you were gonna get because
No.
the payment was like $26,000 a month for a
Yeah.
Ferrari.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
don't do that.
can you just give those numbers again? So on a
Yeah.
fixed rate, in $1 million loan,
Yeah.
a fixed rate mortgage right now is gonna cost you what a month?
$61.57.
Okay,
That's just your mortgage, right? Your principal
okay,
interest.
right, okay. So then if we get an adjustable rate mortgage,
$55.22.
okay. Now the other product that there is, but not every building will let you do it. Co-ops sometimes will not allow you to do this product, which is an interest-only loan. So for some of the, and I don't know whether Citizens allows this, if somebody's buying for their child, so it's an investment property, an interest-only loan is interesting because you can keep, so for $1 million loan and an interest-only loan, it is?
$43.75.
Right. So it's a big difference. So if you're trying to find an apartment for your kid and then you've got the common charges and the real estate taxes or the co-op fee, maintenance on the top of that, it brings it down. But the reason why an interest-only loan is attractive is that, especially if it's like a bonus type of job, or if you feel like somebody is going to be disciplined enough to be able to say, I get a chunk of money, even as a broker, I mean, if we get a chunk of money, then we pay it down to keep your it down. Now, a lot of co-ops believe, hey, you're not going to be having any equity building up in your apartment, but they're usually already asking for you to put, most co-ops will require that you have a maximum amount of financing. The majority of buildings will allow you to finance up to 75%. And I would imagine that the best rates that there are at a minimum of 25% down. I mean, I know that you can put less down, but
Yes.
but you'd want to put, for most loans, 25% down,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, I mean, well, at our bank, if you put between above 70, like between 75 or 80%, you're actually going to get the same rate, and you start to get a break at 70%.
Right.
Um,
So who owns a condo here? Okay. So this is important to know because I didn't know when I was going into my apartment. There's something called a SEMA. Okay. So let's say I've got a $2 million loan on my condo. That when I go to buy the condo, a condo closing costs are higher than a co-op. You have to pay mortgage recording tax on a condo, which is almost 2% of the loan amount, not of the contract amount, of the loan amount. And the co-op, you don't have that, okay? So you buy into this and you immediately have, let's say it's a $2 million loan, you're paying $40,000 to the government just to get your loan. So if you're going into a condo, you go, oh, I have a condo, it's so much better. Keep that in mind. But the second thing is, so now you've got that $2 million loan, that actually is an asset when you're selling your apartment. So I don't even know what my rate is, but so let's say I have a $2 million loan, I'm going to sell my apartment. Citizens Bank and most banks will allow you to do an assignment. So my buyer, if they need a loan, I'm able to assign my mortgage to them. Is it going to be at the same?
Assign the mortgage tax.
Assign the mortgage tax.
Right.
So you're not getting the same rate.
Right, so let's say I come in to buy Ann's apartment, I wish, and I'm going to get a $3 million loan on the apartment, but she has a $2 million loan that she already paid tax on, right? Instead of me having to pay that 2% tax on the $3 million, we can request an assignment from her lender to assign the tax that was already paid on that portion that she still owes, right? And Gina can speak to this as well, to the new loan that I'm doing. So let's say she has a balance of $1.5 million.
Well, let's say it's $2 million.
Let's
$2
say
million.
it's
It's
$2
$2
million.
million. Right.
So we assign that $2 million. Now I'm only paying tax on $1 million instead of $3 million.
So they
that's
save
saving.
$40,000.
But Tina can speak to this too. As the seller, you can use that to a number of different advantages, right? Like you could give all of the benefit to the buyer in order to, I guess, try to get the best price, or you can take some of that benefit as a seller as well,
I
right?
see it a lot as a negotiation.
Yes.
It's just one other closing cost that you can negotiate. It's all negotiable. the seller doesn't have to request the assignment from their lender. But if you can work it out between the parties, you guys can both save a little, right? Why pay that tax on the $2 million that's already been paid before? Try to get the assignment and maybe you guys split the savings, try to work out something. I've seen it as a negotiation.
Yeah.
So in terms of let's say you're buying a piece of property, let's say it's for your kids. How can you hold the title? Okay, so and how does it work? Like, so if parents are buying with a child, okay, working child, if they put down the whole amount, does it count as a gift? Like, is it like?
Well, let me take a step back and say I'm not a tax attorney.
Right.
I'm not here to give anyone tax advice. Let's be clear. I'm not a tax consultant or a tax attorney, and I'm not an estate planning attorney or a trust and estates attorneys. So when my clients come to me, and like you, last week I have so many clients coming to me buying for their kids. On Friday, I spent 3 hours with this gentleman who flew in from Korea Thursday, Friday, and flew back Saturday to look at a $2 million apartment that he's buying for his daughter in a new construction. Now, this gentleman, he had already spoken to his tax consultant and his estate planning attorney. It's in his individual name. His name alone is the best way they told him to structure it for him. He's buying it cash. She will live there. So my clients, they run the gamut. When they're buying, whether it's for their adult children or themselves, or we'll take title in various ways. And it depends on the type of property you're buying, right? Are you buying a co-op or a condo? The co-op might have different rules of what they will or will not allow.
Like most of them don't allow a trust.
They don't allow the trust. Some I find we're getting more and more, they're allowing the trusts, because all my clients from California immediately say, I own everything in a trust. I'm like, okay, welcome to New York. I don't know if your co-op is going to agree. And I'm seeing more and more co-ops are allowing trusts. I don't see them allowing the entities, because Ann and I do represent a lot of very well-known people, and they want privacy above anything else. And so a lot of them will take in trusts if we can get it done, but a lot of them will form limited liability companies, again, for privacy reasons. And some of my clients are buying investments. I have a gentleman who lives in California. He sold a $5 million warehouse, and he goes, you know what? I'd like to do a 1031 exchange. I'll defer my taxes. Let me buy a $3 million condo in Manhattan. I'll own it as an investment.
Okay, hold on. 1031 exchange, because not everybody knows what that is. Okay, so dumb it down, and that's not to say you're dumb, but everybody needs to know the basics.
Right. It cannot be your primary residence.
So wait,
there,
okay,
cannot
so
be your primary residence.
that you're selling. So you have a piece of property that's been an investment property.
Yep.
You go to sell it. You've got a huge gain. You have to buy a piece of property for
A replacement property.
at that price or more.
Yep.
Okay, can't be, and you have to.
And you have to hire.
You have to be in a certain period.
You have to hire a qualified intermediary. The money can never flow to you. At your closing, the qualified intermediary is present. It's another party to our transaction, and all the money flows to them. You go find your replacement property. Usually you have 45 days to identify up to 3 possible replacement properties. So of course you want them ready. You already want those ready by the time you're closing on your sale of your relinquished property. You identify within 45, and you must close and finish your exchange within 180 days from the moment you sold your relinquished property, or you forfeit the benefit. And there is no give on that. It is a time is of the essence, actual date, there's no give. You miss that 180th day, you're done, you'll pay your taxes. And so basically what you're doing is you're taking your money from one investment property and you're just putting it into another one. The general rule is hold that investment property for about 2 years. So for my clients, it runs the gamut.
And why would a person do that?
Well, that's just to defer taxes, right? If you're about to get hit with a big tax, you don't want to this year, defer it. I'm going to put my money back into another piece of investment property. And I have a lot of clients who do that. But most of my clients are buying for their personal use, and they'll buy individually. They will buy in their trusts. The benefits for doing the trust is also privacy for our well-known clients. A trust could help them as well, but you cannot be the trustee because the trustee's name is on the deed if you're buying a condo in New York. You will actually take title as Ann Cudlow-Lanane as trustee of the blank trust. And your name will be on record, and there goes the whole I want to be private, you know? So you have to have somebody you trust. And a lot of our clients, they'll name their business managers, you know, somebody so close to them financially that they trust, that will be their trustee who will actually take title in the name of the trust. So privacy reasons, good way to go is the trust. And you avoid probate, you know, it'll make it a lot quicker to be able to designate who your beneficiary is, who's going to own this property upon your passing.
Okay,
You know.
so that's, I want to go to probate, because again, a lot of us, I deal with a lot of estates. So oftentimes somebody will come in, their parents have, or, you know, one of their parents have passed away, and they say, don't I have to complete probate? So can you just briefly tell us what probate is super quickly, but then explain why that's not the case? What do you need in place in order to sign the exclusive to try to sell it? Because keep in mind, if you list a piece of property in New York City, you can't close on it for like 3 or 4 months anyway. So it's not like I'm going to list it and I'm going to sell it right away.
Right, so if a person passes and their property is going through the probate process, it means you filed a probate petition at surrogate's court. That document you're looking for is your letters testamentary. That is gonna say who your executor is and who has the authority to sell your apartment. Whether it's a co-op or a condo, it doesn't matter. So I would really prefer if clients get that probate done, you know, maybe before they really list the apartment, because I really want those letters testamentary. I want to know that the person signing the contract as the executor has the authority to sell this apartment. So if my clients are buying, I want to see the letters. And right now I have an estate, it's co-executors. The brother is an emergency room doctor who right now is in the middle of Sierra somewhere in rural, like no doctor in the village, only him, and I need him to sign because I need both co-executors have to sign the contract. So that's a little difficult.
And by the way, the lender, you know, with our due diligence, when we see contracts, you know, coming from estates and stuff, we want to make sure, we're also, I've seen that as conditions, like proof that this person has the authority to sign on behalf of this trust or estate. So,
Right, you really need those. So if you are selling a piece of property for someone who has passed, it is good to get that process going because probate could take a few months. It's not going to be a quick process.
Although we're going to go to a Q&A in a second.
But I think, I think too, get your stuff in order now so that your children don't have to deal with, you know, because I've seen you can really elongate, be so messy, right? So make sure, you know, you have your, you know, title set up properly now.
Well, the thing is that you assume, you know, it's like, okay, my mom passes away, I'm the only, let's say, remaining relative, that you would automatically get it. That's a disaster. That will take forever, trust me, right? I mean, you need to be very clearly, you have to have your wills in order. You know, in some cases, you know, get your names on certain accounts or on even real estate, right?
Yeah.
But so as a husband and wife, there used to be, it would be like right of survivorship. Like, so is that still
We
like?
still have it.
Okay, but does it need to be like, if a husband and wife is buying a piece of property, does it have to be anything other than Mary and Joe? I mean.
No, you could take title in different ways, but you can, as husband and wife, you have the right of survivorship. It used to be, it had to be spelled out on the stock certificate.
Okay.
And that used to be a thing. It had to be on the stock certificate and the proprietary lease. And a lot of times the transfer agent wouldn't do that, wouldn't write as husband and wife or, you know, as tenants by the entirety.
Right.
And then somebody would pass, and it literally would mean that the one who passed, their estate owned 50% of that. Now, thank goodness, it has changed, and if it's husband and wife, it's deemed automatically that you own it with right of survivorship. So it's a bit much better now because the transfer agents always miss that. But as far as getting your stuff ready now, I'm a big believer in, even if you're looking to buy, like if you're selling, definitely get your stuff in order. Definitely. If you have done any alterations to your apartments over the years, please get your permit signed off.
No, but
If you've combined apartments, please get that letter of completion from the Department of Buildings, because we need those to close. And
there's nobody in here that thinks,
PSA.
but there's nobody in here that thinks that they don't have their permits or their combination done. And I will tell you that probably 50% of the people in this room, that there's something in the Department of Buildings website that's going to be a problem. If you are thinking of selling in the near foreseeable future or ever, call me. I will have it pulled up on the Department of Buildings website. I can see it. Very simple. And I will tell you, because usually these things are simple to take care of, but they can take a year, like really a year, long time, or a lot of money. And you need to just know. I mean, if you don't want to do it, then you don't do it, but at least you need to know. It's being proactive. And I cannot tell you that I work with attorneys all the time, and they're like, they call me the combo queen, because whenever I take an apartment, I always check, especially in a combination, because they're not legal. Because it used to be that the attorney for the buyer would have to go down to pull the records, right, to see if they were legally combined, and so they just didn't go.
no,
So they didn't go, and so no one checked, and now they can't check because they click a button, and now you got to fix it.
yes.
Okay.
No, I'm always searching. I'm not an architect or an expediter, but I have a lot of clients buying. I have this couple right now buying a $9.5 million condo, and I'm practicing a long time, and every deal I learn something new or I see something different. I go to their website, they're buying the penthouse, and I had already known that they'd added a floor to this. It's only a 6-unit building, and they own now the top 3-4 floors. I go to the Department of Buildings website, and across the screen is this like banner. Partial vacate exists at this property. And I'm like, for $9 million, but you have to vacate? I'm like, what does this mean? And there's so much, the seller had no idea. Seller had no idea.
What does it mean?
It was from 2018, and it has not been signed off yet. This building actually had bricks fall off their facade on the 4th and 5th floors. And this guy who bought the apartment that my clients are buying from, he only bought it 2 years ago. And I'm gonna say, well, where was your lawyer? Why didn't he know? Because this has been on the Department of Buildings website since 2016, 2018, and I could tell you that bricks fell off the 4th and 5th floors. Like, I'm all over that Department of Building websites.
Right.
There's so much there that nobody would know of. The seller had no idea.
So
No idea.
the other thing is, I know the good real estate attorneys, okay? And I know that real estate brokers don't have a tendency to be trusted. But I had a situation recently where somebody said, I said, let me give you the names of some good attorneys. And they said, no, my friend, he does all of my real estate, and he's a real estate guy. All of my real estate. Okay, fine. So what am I gonna do? He has his attorney. The attorney actually says to me, I said, here's who you contact. So how an attorney does due diligence is they read the condo or co-op minutes, because it tells you many things. They look at the Department of Buildings. They do things. They ask a 3-page questionnaire. What's in there? What's in the, okay, all this stuff. He actually says to me, there's no, I said, here's how to read it. There's no reason to read the minutes. It's a condo. I said, what? And he goes, even for a co-op, I don't think I'd read them. What would I learn anyway? They wouldn't put anything bad in there anyway.
Best things in the minutes.
Oh,
you learn the best things in the
my
minutes.
God, it was crazy. I mean, the lack of, I can't, and I couldn't really say anything. This was his friend. This was the person that he thought was, and so it was horrifying to me, because I do believe that the building is okay, but I don't know that. I'm not looking at the minutes. I'm not doing, it's not my job. I really can't. But you have to use somebody that is not your friend, not that does commercial real estate, not like your cousin Harry who does estates. It has to be a New York City real estate attorney, which leads me to ask you, can either one of you help if you are moving to, can you get somebody a loan if they're going to Florida or Las Vegas, or you can still help them with a loan?
Yes,
and then
sir.
can you help outside of New York? Because, are you licensed to?
Yeah, we do loans in the 48 states, not Alaska or Hawaii, but every other state.
Okay.
And Florida's a huge state for us. And it's
And so
also,
you personally
like,
can help with somebody?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
So do you have to have a license for that, or is it like a?
No, I work for a bank, so I'm federally chartered, so I'm licensed in all states that the bank lends in.
Got it. And then and
Just
obviously.
New York. So I was licensed in New York and Connecticut because when I was 20-something years old and I was graduating law school and taking the bar, I thought, I don't know where I'm going to work. I live so close, I might as well take the Connecticut bar also. But then I've been doing New York City real estate for 26 years. I don't practice in Connecticut. And even when my brother bought his house in Ridgefield, I was like, you need a local attorney. You need somebody who knows the customs. You know, I don't want to come in here and cause you problems, but I'm here to help. And I have a great attorney that I love, Mike Murray in Connecticut. And so he refers me all his New York City deals. I refer him Connecticut. And so I stay in my own lane, my New York City deals. And mostly I represent New York City developers also, besides representing all of these, individuals buying and selling. And I think that's a nice aspect of my career. And I love that I get both. It's so unique that I get to represent these developers. And then I also get to represent individuals buying. And what really helps me is when my clients are buying from developments. Because when you talk about, not only do you need a New York or a real estate attorney, if you're buying from a sponsor, that is a whole different set. That's a whole new ball game. You've got the Attorney General rules and regs, and this is what I do. I write these. I represent all my developers, and so I read these offering plans. Like, I met with this gentleman on Friday for 3 hours. I was so excited to read this plan and tell him everything he could possibly ever imagine. It is not sexy. It is not sexy. No. I told him everything he could imagine. His 22-year-old daughter is going to be living there. Like, I'm sitting here telling him, like, this is what you need to be concerned about her safety. Like, you know how many 22-year-old nieces I have? So it's so exciting. There's so much in every new project, but there's a lot of reading. There's a lot of due diligence, and there's a lot of
This attorney
reading.
did not even read the offering plan.
No.
Didn't even.
That's awful.
No, it was terrible. It was terrible. We're going to open this up to a couple Q&As, but what I want you to do is that you are going to have questions, whether it's now, whether it is a year from now. Make sure to reach out to these ladies. They're great. Tina's card is on. I know that there were cards on the table, so pull the cards. But I do send a thank you for everybody that comes, and I make sure that everybody's got the information on there, and you'll have the ability to know where to get these.
My daughter had a car accident this afternoon, so I left the house without my cards.
She's okay.
I'll get she's fine. She's fine. Car not so much. But I'll get you my contact.
So let's just take a couple questions. Go ahead.
Well, Ann, I just wanted to really backtrack like a half an hour or so. We were talking about staging apartments. I have seen your Instagram, your Facebook, and your newsletter, and it is phenomenal what you do with the staging. And when you see the before and after, so to anybody who is looking to sell or I guess even buy, right? But you are like a godsend to people that you represent.
Thank you.
Like a miracle worker.
Oh my God, you have no idea. You have no idea.
We do
Thank
because
you.
we're watching the video.
You're watching the videos, that's right. Any questions? Good.
I have a question. I own a co-op, and I often wonder, I'm on the board, so I should know this, but I often wonder, I have a will that clearly I only have one daughter, so my co-op would be left to her, but are there things that I'm supposed to be doing before that, like putting her on the stop certificates or something like that, before that eventually things comes?
Again, you should speak to your estate planning attorney, but you don't need to. If you have it in the will that that's how your assets are going to pass, then that's fine.
Go ahead.
We do a lot of estate clearance. We're mood managers and professional organizers. And I had a question for you specifically. We've had many clients over the last couple of years who lost loved ones, and so many of them, when they were waiting for the letters, it took months. Like in some case, for one client, it was 18 months. And I'm wondering, and they don't want to move forward or do anything with the stuff inside of the home until they could have the letters. So I believe that you're not supposed to take things out until you have the letters, but can we prepare the apartment for the eventual dispersal of the items that are in the house
Well-
before they have the letters?
I would say you're probably staging the apartments before I ever get involved.
Yeah, well, first of all, the attorney has got their head up their ass. I mean, in terms of, no, I'm sorry. Estate attorneys in general, I have found, tend to not be on it. They just, I don't have the best, I haven't had the best experience with estate attorneys on that end of it, and sometimes it takes forever, and it shouldn't. It shouldn't. It should just be proactive. So I would say, if it's not working, then stop continuing the dysfunction and switch gears with anything, whether you're selling something, whether your broker's not working, but if it's taking 18 months to get letters when they are, it shouldn't take that long. It doesn't take that long.
No, and
It's
things were delayed
weeks.
during COVID. Surrogate's
Yeah.
court was closed for a while. They were behind, so that was a little part of the delay. But yes, they absolutely can be getting the apartment ready while
100%.
Well, in this particular instance, her husband had, the estate attorney was the executor of the will and not her.
Right, well, then there's that. Anybody else? Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
So, as a young person, I just want to know, I want to buy a place in a few years. I want to know how to start setting myself up now to do that in a few years. I know credit score is important and down payment, but is there anything else I should be doing?
Well, let's talk bank, because what would you
Yeah.
need, what would you need in the bank?
Yeah,
Like,
I would say that,
what's the ratios, what?
well, you do want to, not having any credit is almost worse than having, like not the perfect credit. So you always want to have you want to try to have at least 3 what we call trade lines. So that could be a student loan, perhaps that you're paying on, a couple of credit cards. So you want to establish credit in your own name, not just be an authorized user on like your parents' credit card.
Yeah, no, I have my own credit.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
She's giving you the,
Yeah, I mean, you obviously want to pay your bills on time, so you keep your credit up. But the 3 things that we look for is credit, income, assets. So income is, where are you working? If you're self-employed, then we're going to look at, we want to see a 2-year history. If you're employed with an employer, then you're W-2. You don't have to be on the job for 2 years. But if you get like variable income, Ann was talking about it at the beginning, like if you have a bonus or you get paid some commission, then we really want to see a 2-year history of that. So if you have anything like that, start thinking about that and, making sure that, from a timing perspective. And then, saving money and thinking about, I always say that you need money not just for down payment, but for closing costs, and then other things like taxes that might be due, or paying for your homeowner's insurance for a year ahead of time. I
but
feel
how
like,
much do you have to have in the bank? Because usually, I will tell you, that the bank will approve you for a bigger purchase than the co-op will.
yes,
So it's important to kind of
Yeah.
actually backtrack and speak to a good broker
Yeah.
to say, what do you need for a co-op? Because co-ops are less expensive than condos, and if you're looking for entry level, you'll want to go for a co-op. Most co-ops require that you have to put down 25%. There are some buildings that will be okay with 20. Is it okay with your bank? But then typically for a co-op, you have to have 2 years mortgage and maintenance in the bank that's liquid, not retirement. And you have to not be spending more than 25% of your gross income, okay, on mortgage and maintenance, okay? That's the rule of thumb for a general co-op. But for the
that's
bank,
a lot, yeah. So the bank is a lot less restrictive.
Right.
And listen, if you're financing up to, let's call it 725,000, you may not need to have but 2 months reserves in the bank, 2 months mortgage, and,
but you'll never get through a co-op.
no. But with a condo, right? if you're
But
putting
the condo closing costs are higher, so that wipes out your reserves. But one way to go around it, and if you're all looking on Street Easy, if you want to like look at and dream about where you're going to go, Street Easy, there's a button there that will that you can look for a sponsor apartment. A sponsor apartment will be a co-op or a condo, but usually a co-op, that it is in a building that's already converted to a rental, and it's the apartments that the rent stabilized tenant that was there has moved out, passed away, and the sponsor has usually renovated it, but you don't have to go through board approval for that. So you're able to buy it at a slightly more than a co-op price. You're able to get financing. You don't have the closing costs, but there's very few of them around, but that's the way to
I'm
go.
doing one right now for somebody that's like
Yeah.
that, right? Where they, because they're buying a sponsored unit, they don't have to meet all of the requirements.
Right,
that
and it's
typically
much
they would.
easier. We're going to take one other question, and then we got to let everybody go, and you must be freezing because it's like blowing up.
It's like right.
I know, I'm so sorry, I'm watching you, like you're turning
But I
blue,
am
I'm so
at that
sorry.
age, though.
Okay.
I know.
It's going hot, we're going cold. What's up?
Actually, another question. To start with the first one you just mentioned, who's the sponsor? Who is it? Is it the building that owns it? When you say sponsor?
The sponsor usually is the person that took it from a rental building, owned the building, and converted it from a rental building to a co-op or a condo. Or it's the person, like the developer, who built this building, Steve Ross and related, built the building. They would be considered the sponsor, and but this is a ground-up development. So the sponsor.
If you buy it, how do you sell it? And that's what goes back to the sponsor.
No. So if you buy a sponsor unit, you're buying directly from the sponsor. Then let's say I buy it from you, I'm buying a resale.
So she'd have to go through board approval. Okay. Thank you, ladies, for coming and joining us.